Hello everybody and welcome to another Media Studies lesson. So if you're new to the channel, then all I can recommend is that you go back to the very beginning and watch these lessons in sequence. They very much build upon each other, so it's really worth watching them in order. If you're a student here trying to learn a little bit about media or doing a bit of revision, then you're going to need a mini whiteboard and a whiteboard pen, and then an exercise book or some way of making some notes, some line paper, something like that. I try and deliver these lessons as if I were in a classroom, or the closest I can. So feel free to pause the video at any point to give yourself enough time to work on some of the tasks and questions. There'll be some times where I would be saying, like, talk to the person next to you. That's not going to be particularly easy if you're watching this video on your own. You may just have to have that conversation in your own head. So without further ado, let's get started. On the board here, we have 5 questions on your mini whiteboards in as fewer words as possible. Try and tackle these. Now, if you've been following these lessons from the beginning, this should be relatively straightforward. Pause the video now, give yourself as much time as you need, but in my classroom, you'd have as much time as it takes me to do the register, which is normally 4 or 5 minutes. Right, question number 1. What is the difference between prejudice and discrimination? So that's where prejudice is thinking something and discrimination is doing something. The difference between sexuality and gender identity. Well, sexuality is someone you're attracted to, whoever you fancy, and gender identity is someone's sense of your own gender, so whether you feel like you are male or female. What generation are you considered to be? This one's a bit dodgy for a video because I don't know who you are watching this, but in my lesson right now, some of my students would be Gen Z or digital natives, and some might be Generation Alpha. Generation Alpha born around about 2014, 2015, that kind of thing. So maybe a little bit young for my current audience. How many waves of feminism have there been, and when were they? Well, there have been 4. First wave was the 1800s, second 1960s, third is in the 90s, and the fourth wave we're going through right now. And final question, what are the 4 topics we will study on this course? Well, that's media language, representations, audiences, and industries. So in a moment, when I say go, you're going to write today's lesson title and today's date in your notes or in your notebook, however you're doing notes for this video. Give them a nice, neat double underline as well. Give yourself about 20 seconds for that. What you're after here is the word technological contexts. You don't need to write down the lesson objective, but it is on the screen the whole time in the top there. And today we are trying to explore how technology has changed the media. So 20 seconds, title and date. Go. What I would do now in my lesson is what's known as a prerequisite knowledge check. What do you need to know already to be able to access this lesson? Because if you don't know this lesson's going to maybe go over your head or pass you by a little bit. So can you answer these questions? What are the 3 formats of media? What are the 9 forms or types of media that we study on this course? What is a generation? And why might different generations have different values and ideologies? So the 3 formats of media are print, broadcast, and OSNP, which stands for online, social, and participatory. The 9 forms or types of media we study are newspapers, magazines, adverts, radio, television, music videos, social media, video games, and film. So what is a generation? Well, that's a group born around the same time, sharing common experiences, historical events, and different types of media. We just had one of those questions in our starting quiz. For which generation are you? Why might different generations have different values and ideologies? Well, they grew up with different media and different shaping events in the world. I was an adult when COVID hit. You were probably a child when when we went into lockdown. Things like that will affect us differently. So most of what we've explored so far in the run-up to these lessons, this is lesson 8, I believe, has been to do with the idea of contexts. So far we've looked at different social movements, but social context is about how people think. So beliefs and ideas around race, gender, or sexuality. Historical context is more about the events at the time, so wars, global events, different generations, and what they had affecting them. Today we're moving on to the realm of technology. Different media technologies have had a huge impact on people. My father was 13 when they got a TV. I had one from birth. I remember getting the internet installed when I was 16. You might be lucky enough to have lived in a home that has had it your whole life. But this affects our culture. So, where social context is about what people think, cultural context is more about what people do, how they dress, what they eat, and what media they have access to, and how they consume it. So, when I was young, the main source of media was television. But I mean old school TV. The Simpsons was on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. on Channel 2. I don't mean TV like today's streaming and on demand stuff. So technology has led to some pretty major cultural changes. I think we need a little bit of a recap from a previous lesson. This should look familiar to you. So let's have a quick brief history of old media. Print media was arguably one of the most important things mankind has ever embarked upon. It took us out of the Dark Ages, giving us science, enlightenment, entertainment. The start of media was with products like newspapers, magazines, and basic adverts. And these are all print media, which means they're all physical, they're on paper, and are image and word based. The invention of the printing press in the 1400s allowed for the mass production of print media. That means it's cheaper, easier, and quicker to make, and to make a lot of it. Broadcast media came next, after the discovery of electricity. By the 1930s, radio was a common platform in the UK. Around 9 million households, that was about 85%, had a radio by the end of that decade. In the 1960s, more and more families had their own TV sets. So unlike radio, TV had the power to show people what was happening, not just tell them. Radio and TV were very popular because it was easier to access, as in you didn't have to read it, and it was so much more convenient. You didn't have to go and buy the newspaper every day, for example. So it was live, it was instant, and especially when compared with like print media. So print and broadcast are collectively known as traditional media or old media because they are linear, like a line, one way. Producers make them and the audience consumes them. Audiences can't interact with them or feed back in any way. Old media is still used today. It's just old as in old-fashioned. So what makes these old media isn't that they have been around for ages, it's that they're old-fashioned. Audiences can't interact with them or participate in any way. On your mini whiteboards, in as fewer words as possible, what is old traditional media? So you should have something like, it's print and broadcast media, it's old-fashioned because you can't interact with it, it's linear, meaning it's one way, the producers make it and the audience consumes it. Okay, new and digital media. So new media, often referred to as digital media, has been the real game changer. In essence, it's all of OS&P, online, social and participatory media. But the speed of this new development has been insane. OS&P includes things like video games, social media, websites and apps, and it's based on computing technology, the internet, and mobile technology like Wi-Fi and smartphones. So the main difference is that it is interactive. Audience participate in it and respond. So unlike old media, new media is two-way communication or non-linear. We, the audience, actively create and add to it. We produce the content as well as consume it. Just by watching this video, you are adding to it because the view count's going to go up. That's going to change someone's interpretation of it. You might leave a comment. That adds more to it as well. And I'm no professional. I'm just an audience member. I'm just making these videos to help my students and hopefully anyone else who's interested. You couldn't do that 20 years ago. So, on your mini whiteboards, in as fewer words as possible, what is new media? Okay, you should have something like, it's OS&P, but it's interactive media that we engage with and we help create. It's non-linear or two-way communication. All of that so far should have been a recap. We did touch upon this in an earlier lesson, but it's nice to refresh our memories. My students like to write definitions down, keywords down before we get into it. They see them on the board and can't help themselves. Rather than fight it, I allow that. So in the back of your books, you should have a terminology list. where you have the keyword, the definition, and maybe even an example. Pause the video here for about 30 seconds to write this one down. So we know the internet has revolutionized nearly every aspect of our lives, but the early version, known as Web 1, was quite different from the internet we use today. Back in the early 90s and into the 2000s, Web 1 was in its infancy, and it relied on something called dial-up. So to get online, you had to physically connect your home phone to the computer. So the term going online comes from this process because it was essentially like making a phone call. Your computer would connect to another computer using tones and beeps to transmit data. So Web 1 was very basic and wasn't actually that interactive. Websites were mostly static, meaning they functioned more like digital magazines or newspapers. For example, you can see here early websites for companies like Sainsbury's were essentially just pages with text and images. You could look at them, but you couldn't really interact with it. You couldn't stream videos or listen to music or even share content. The internet back then wasn't fast enough to handle large file sizes. Sending emails was about the most interactive thing you could do, and even that felt slow. You also needed to be at a computer, in a home or office, near the telephone. It wasn't mobile, it wasn't out in public, or anything like it is today. So, on your mini whiteboard, and as fewer words as possible, you're not just giving me the definition again, you're expanding a little bit. What is Web 1? So you should have, it was the first version of the internet, slow, technical, and very limited. Again, when I say go, not before, add this definition to the back of your books. Pause the video if you need to, take about 30 seconds. Go. So, Web 2.0 transformed the internet into the interactive and dynamic space we know today. The major difference was the introduction of broadband internet, which allowed for much faster data transfer. This meant people could now stream videos, listen to music, play games, and access graphic-rich websites without the same limitations. You can even connect to the internet outside, in the middle of a park, on your phone. This may seem absolutely normal and just taken for granted by you guys, but it still feels a little like magic to most of us. Web 2.0 also made it easier for users to create and share content. In the Web 1 era, you needed to know how to code and create a website. But Web 2.0 introduced user-friendly tools where you can simply click a button to make something bold or publish something online without knowing any programming languages. With Web 1, not really many people could do it. With Web 2, my grandma could make a Facebook page. This led to the rise of blogs, social media platforms like Facebook, and other user-generated content. This is where the audience can create and add to media online. People no longer needed to build their own websites. You can just create pages or profiles on existing platforms like Instagram or like Facebook, and share your photos and your videos and thoughts with your friends or to the world. Now, this coincided or happened at the same time as mobile technologies, but smartphones, which means the audience could access the internet on the go. Okay, mini whiteboard time. In your own words, what is Web 2.0? Again, we don't just want the definition that's on the screen. I want you to explain it, explore it more. Okay, hopefully you've got words on there like on the go, allows you to create content yourself, easier, user-friendly. Final word of the day, convergence. Pause the video here, add it to your terminology lists. So, in essence, old and new media aren't just separate. In many ways, they're combining. You don't just watch a film on your phone. You play games, you talk with friends, you post on social media, you make films, you edit them, all sorts. Newspapers, they're not just print anymore. They're print, they're broadcast, they're OSMP, all at the same time, at least when you're on your phone. So this combining of media technologies and formats is known as convergence. The average smartphone now has more tech inside it than you can see in this picture of the table. Your phone has access to every book ever written, every film ever recorded, every song ever produced. You can access the news instantly. You can even create and publish your own media, and everyone has one. All of this stuff is combining and more. It's a phone, it's a TV, it's a cinema, it's a megaphone, it's a newspaper, it's a camera, it's all of these things all in one. That's convergence. So again, mini whiteboards, what's convergence in your own words? So really it's the way different media platforms, devices and industries are combining into one experience. Let's quickly consider the impact of Web 2 on old media. TV. It's not how it used to be. This is an image here of what TV was when it first came out in the 60s, all the way up into the late 90s, early 2000s. With old media, TV was a one-way thing. You could change the channel, you could maybe put on a tape, or when I was a teenager, a DVD. But that was it. Now, we can live stream, binge watch series, play from the beginning, even share our favourites with our friends. Netflix watch parties, they allow you to sync up a viewing with friends and have an open chat menu whilst you're watching it. Disney Plus gives you because you watched and uses an algorithm to suggest content. TV isn't what it used to be. Even my dad, in his 70s, he rarely watches TV. I mean, he's not going to Channel 1 at 6 p.m. to watch the news. He's going to his TV whenever he likes and he's using an app or Netflix or Disney Plus. Again, this is totally normal for you guys, but this has only been the case for the last 10, 15 years. And what about newspapers? So in a minute, when I say go, I want you to consider the impact Web 2.0 has had on news, just like we did with television just there. Here you can see the old-fashioned, old media way of accessing the news. It's a newspaper, printed daily, sold in shops. It's got pictures, it's got words. It's one-way communication. Here we can see a news app. This is for the BBC News. So again, in a moment, when I say go, I want you to turn and talk to your partner. Now, if you're watching this on your own, you're going to have this discussion just on your own. And I want you to consider what impact Web 2.0 has had on the news. You will need to jot down your ideas on your mini whiteboards. And again, we're mainly thinking about what a news app offers that a newspaper doesn't. You might want to think about the following questions. So, how has Web 2.0 impacted news media? Has it changed anything for audiences? Has it changed anything for producers? Has it impacted the finances and the way it makes money at all? Has it affected the content of the news stories themselves? Does it raise any issues? So pause the video here, give yourself 2 or 3 minutes to tackle these questions and use your own initiative to think about how you think it's impacted the news. Now, at this point, I'd be asking my students to feedback and I'd be orchestrating a nice conversation between us. But I assume you've managed to get things like, for audiences, news is now faster, easier, and more interactive. You can read, watch, comment, share, even create news yourself. So the audience is no longer just a passive consumer. For producers, news organizations now have to publish constantly across websites, apps, and social media. They have to compete with influencers and citizen journalists. That's the rest of us just doing our own thing. Financially, Web 2.0 has made things harder for traditional newspapers because audiences expect news to be free online. Free, but maybe there's lots of adverts. So advertising money has also shifted towards places like Google and Meta and TikTok. It's changed the content of the news because stories are often shorter, they're more visual, they're more focused on clicks, shares, engagement. Headlines seem to be more dramatic or more clickbait to attract attention. It also raises issues around fake news, misinformation, bias, trolling and online abuse, because anyone can publish. It can be harder for audiences to know what's accurate, what's trustworthy. Overall, Web 2.0 has made news more immediate and participatory, but also more competitive and less financially stable, and much harder to regulate. That means have laws and rules around it. So there's been a lot there in this lesson. It's a lot of teacher talk. Hopefully there was enough questions in there to keep everyone engaged. But in essence, all you need to do now is write about all of that in your books. So in a moment, when I say go, not before, you need to write about everything we've explored today in the front of your books. This is your chance to explain how the internet changed from something people mainly just looked at into something people could interact with, create content on, and share. So you need to write in full sentences. You need to explain how Web 2 changed what audiences can do, how this has affected media producers, how traditional media industries like newspapers, television, how they've had to adapt. Think about music. I'm sure most of you get your music on Spotify rather than buy a CD. What about film? What about advertising? How has Web 2.0 affected any of the finances? Has it changed the content of any of these things? Can it be positive or is it more negative? Does it create more problems? Try and use words like interaction, participate, sharing, streaming. Now, as always, what I'll put here on the screen for you is some support if you need it. This reflects the bare minimum. These are just some sentence stems to get you started and a few keywords. So this is the bare minimum. You can write a lot more than you would than there's just here. I'd give you 10, maybe even 15 minutes because there's so much you can explore. Remember, there are 9 types of media that you can write about here as well. So pause the video for as long as you need, and I'll see you in a moment. That does bring us to the end of the lesson. Now, I would hope by this point you would be able to answer some basic questions. What's Web 1? What's Web 2.0? What's convergence? Hopefully you feel like you now have explored how technology has changed the media in terms of different time frames, if you like. Now, if for any reason there was time left at the end of this lesson, here's another question for you to think about. Will there be a Web 3.0, and what will it be like? Think about AI, virtual reality, or augmented reality. Augmented reality is where you kind of overlay reality. So you might have goggles or glasses on and you can still see the real world, but it's overlaid with like a heads-up display that maybe has a combination of virtual reality and real life. What about robots? We all know that Elon Musk is charged with building millions and millions of robots. Is that going to affect the way we therefore communicate with each other or how the media might work? Maybe it's more about ownership and control. Will we have more ownership as the audience, or will companies find ways to monetize and take it back? Will it be more personalized? Even online, we all read the same stories. With AI, maybe I can read the same news story as you, but have it tailored to how I read. So have a think about that and see what ideas you come up with. Again, thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe. It helps other people find the channel. Please add a comment in if you disagree or agree with anything, but keep it nice, keep it clean, always be kind. If you're a teacher and you want to purchase this lesson, you can find a link to my TES Shop in the description, although pretty much all of the introductory topic is free anyway. If you're a student, like I say, hopefully you've learned something from this. Do share this with your other peers, your other friends and other students. Share this with your teachers if you think they could learn from it. Unless you're one of my students, then I've probably just sent you here to watch this for a homework. Thanks again, and I'll see you at the next one.